The Bangko Sentral says the economy is in a sweet spot with inflation well within target, banks solid, and reserves topping $100 billion. But growth is lagging at just 5.4% in the first half of the year. The deficit has swelled past 780 billion pesos, and as much as 119 billion pesos may have been lost to questionable projects. So is this really a sweet spot, or are we at risk of unraveling? To help us make sense of the bigger picture, we're joined by former BSP Deputy Governor Diwa Guinigiundo. Good morning, sir, and thank you for being here with us.
Hi, good morning, Mikey, and thank you for this invitation.
Okay, sir, let's get to it. The BSP governor says the economy is in a sweet spot. Low inflation, moderate growth. Do you agree?
Well, I agree with the BSP's sweet spot as far as low inflation, strong and stable banks, and ample reserves are concerned. In short, I think the BSP enjoys substantial monetary space. But these are the basic deliverables of the BSP, and therefore one can say that the BSP is doing its job. However, that sweet spot could have been sweeter if the growth numbers are more robust. They should be more robust. Okay, the first semester of 2025 saw growth slowing down to about 5.4% compared to the lower end of the target of the government of 5.5. The range is 5.5 to 6.5%. I mean, it could have been higher, and that could have made the sweet spot even sweeter. At the same time, we should also be concerned with the dwindling fiscal space. Our fiscal deficit averaged around 1.5 trillion pesos every year. And for the first 7 months of the year alone, we had about 784 billion in fiscal deficit. So that would be around 5.7% of GDP, the same level as the whole year of 2024. Again, how do we finance the deficit? Then either we impose higher taxes or we borrow more. But our level of NG debt is already very high at 17.3 billion, or around 63% of GDP. So in other words, we could have been enjoying a sweeter spot if these numbers have been better, have been more favorable than what the numbers suggest at this point.
Yeah, we could have been in a sweeter spot. The goal is 6 to 7%. That has been but it seems harder and harder to reach. Right now, we're at 5.4% in the first half. Apart from corruption, of course, what's holding us back, sir?
Well, what are the numbers? Well, in terms of demand for the first semester of 2025, private household consumption and government spending actually expanded during the first semester. But this was not enough to provide a more substantial counterweight to the sharp slowdown in private investment. And you know, private investment means more production, more employment, more sources of livelihood for our people. And private consumption, as it is, could have been stalled by still elevated consumer prices, even as inflation had been effectively reined in. On the other hand, government spending, as we witnessed in recent events, was not as potent as one would expect, precisely because public funds were not entirely going to their budgeted allocations, especially on infrastructure and flood control. Now, by production sector, we see that while agriculture turned around in the first semester, positively meaning that means industry and services both lost some steam. For me, it's bad governance, weak trust and confidence by investors, even as the government continues to pursue strategic public policy reforms. We have to have a more effective blueprint of government.
Okay, sir, you mentioned a lot of things. Let's break them down. Let's talk about inflation. Inflation has been reined in because our growth has been moderate. What does this tell you about our trajectory, especially as the BSP is in the middle of an easing cycle, which some analysts see continuing up until 2026?
Well, inflation for the first 7 months of the year was more than benign. The average was 1.7%. And the forecast of the BSP continues to be equally benign, 3.3% for 2026 and 3.4% for 2027. However, there are price risks or upside risks in the horizon. Number one, we see the 2-month import ban on rice. Now, that could have the effect of pushing up rice prices, and we know that rice accounts for 8.9% of the total consumer consumer basket. So, if something happens to rice prices, that could have a very substantial effect on the average consumer price index. That's one. Second, it is also possible down the line because of issues about fiscal sustainability, the tariff could be adjusted to from 15 to again back to 35%. Again, this is something that could also affect price levels of rice. On top of that, we expect some adjustments in the power rates, higher generation, power generation. So NPC is petitioning for a higher rate, higher transmission by the NGCP, and of course, a higher cost of distribution by
Global trade.
Meralco.
Yeah.
So if we factor this in and include also unfavorable global trade, which could be affected by Trump's uncertain tariff decisions, well, that could have the effect of pushing further the inflation forecast for 2026 and 2027. And that could have an important impact on the easing policy of the BSP.
Yeah, a lot to calibrate. While inflation is well within target, there are price risks ahead,
Yes,
especially in the
yes.
form of rice, power, and of course, global trade. Talking about our fiscal health, sir, the budget deficit hit 784 billion in the first 7 months of the year. That's an increase of 22%. That seems pretty quick. Are you concerned, or how concerned are you about the pace and the trajectory, this steep incline?
Well, yes, Mikey, I will be personally worried given the path of the fiscal deficit and the level of government debt at this point. I was saying earlier that we normally have a 1.5 trillion peso fiscal deficit, or about 5 to 6% of GDP. And to finance that, we have to borrow more. And that is where my worry lies, actually. Unless we're able to impose fiscal discipline, okay, and good governance in both the budget process and project execution, it is likely that we would be seeing higher fiscal shortfall and higher debt, if not accompanied by higher taxes. Annual debt service last year was already high at 2 trillion pesos. Imagine, 2 trillion pesos. And for the first 7 months of 2025, debt servicing alone stood at 876 billion, or around 1.5 trillion by the end of this year. Well, that's about 22% of our
Yeah.
6.9 trillion budget
Yeah.
proposed for next year.
Interest plus principal, that's a huge chunk of our budget already.
That's right, Mikey.
Yeah.
That's right.
And as we talk about all of this, corruption issues are taking center stage. Secretary Ralph Recto just said that he estimates that ghost flood control projects may have cost the country 119 billion pesos, equivalent to 266,000 jobs. How damaging would you say this is to our growth trajectory, sir?
Well, I have no way of validating those numbers, Mikey, but at face value, that many jobs, 266,000, could have reduced both unemployment and underemployment statistics in the Philippines. And that could have added more to livelihood and private consumption. And in turn, that would have driven more momentum for economic growth.
Yeah.
I think and I believe that better financial management and good governance at the top and in Congress could have avoided this great scandal in executing government projects. That has the effect of eroding public trust and confidence in our elected government.
Speaking of erosion of public trust in the government, the 2025 budget is being called the most corrupt in years. This is infringing on our ability to spend on things with high multiplier effects like infrastructure, education, health, agriculture. What does this tell you about where we are at this junction, sir?
Well, it was called most corrupt budget precisely because there were unconscionable congressional insertions that resulted in most critical priority projects of government in public health, public education, social infrastructure being deprioritized in favor of less socially beneficial, but definitely more profitable for some politicians and private contractors. That's very sad. Second, the budget and the subsidy for PhilHealth were also withheld. Thus, PhilHealth failed to increase the coverage of the Filipino people and to cover more types of health issues. And less public hospitals were built and less hospital beds were made available. Okay? That is bad for human capital development. And on top of that, public education could have been enhanced if better training was given to teachers. More teachers could have been hired, more classrooms could have been built. Now, this involves human capital development to ensure good quality leaders and workforce in the next decades or so. We could have also innovated through higher budget in the absence of those congressional insertions, okay, for research and development. Better weather forecasting instruments could have been procured. Better and stronger military could have been produced. Instead, the budget for unconditional transfer was bloated for election purposes, and those public resources were also allegedly stolen by some officials. So we could have grown more, Mikey. We could have funded more social amelioration projects to equip our next generation of leaders. And that actually affected our capacity to grow in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Another thing, in its latest ratings review, Moody's kept our ratings stable. Reading between the lines, sir, what does that mean? Does that necessarily mean that the bias over the next 12 to 18 months is tilted to the downside? Because they didn't say positive.
Well, if we look at the reasons why Moody's kept our rating stable, they cited our efforts in pursuing economic reforms. And they were also saying that some of the fiscal indicators actually improved. However, they also took notice of the fact that growth was below targets. Now, our rating now is Baa2, which is investment grade. However, it is the minimum investment grade. Okay, and the stable outlook was due precisely to these efforts at economic liberalization, fiscal consolidation, and robust macroeconomic fundamentals. If we fail in the next 12 months of the year to pursue economic liberalization, if we fail to consolidate our fiscal balances and fail to show a sustained macroeconomic fundamentals, a positive outlook could also mean a downgrade. Okay? However, if we are able to sustain them in all of those three fronts, that could have been, that could translate into an upgrade. So it's up to us. It's up to government. It's up to the private sector to make a difference and turn that stable outlook into a positive outlook, which could presage a possible upgrade to a higher level of investment rating.
Yeah, that's the target. That's where we all want to go. But in the
That's
meantime,
right.
flood control scandals are dominating the news. The PSC index fell to the 6,000 level yesterday. Right now we're back at 6,100 level. But of course, investor confidence has taken a hit. How much? Of course, you don't have the figures, but just your guesstimate. How much would you say all these corruption scandals with the flood control, by how much has it eroded investor confidence locally and from foreign investors?
Well, it's not only the issue of the flood control anomaly, Mikey. That would also include the issue of about impeachment, okay? Because all of this raised the issue of rule of law, okay? The issue of justice, the issue of good governance. And therefore, flood control scandal is just about the same thing, corruption and bad governance. Now, if you read a recent IMF study, as quoted in the press, it shows that if the level of corruption in the Philippines could be reduced to that of Singapore, investment to GDP ratio could rise by some 6.6 percentage points. And annual per capita GDP growth could increase by 1.65%. Now that is great, no? That is great. If we are just able to moderate or control greed, okay, in the execution of public works projects, that could translate into lower poverty, lower income, an equal distribution of income. That could also translate into more public works projects for the benefit of our people.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, sir.
And a cautionary tale is what is happening in Indonesia. No, there are also hostilities in Thailand and Myanmar. So those are cautionary tales. There could be a tipping point, no, to all of this. The people are beginning to see what is happening behind those budget process and execution of public works project.
Yeah, but at the same time, as it happens in other countries, taking a look at our local bourse, we're losing steam so much that trading value is stuck at the bottom of the ASEAN.
That's right. That's right.
It's happening to a crazy degree here at home. Regulators, we have this story coming up, but I'll tell you a little bit about it now. Regulators are warning that online gambling is stealing market interest. What does this say about the state of our capital markets, sir?
Well, number one, and no one can deny this, our capital market is very shallow. If our capital markets would have been as deep and as developed as that of Malaysia and Thailand, I mean, we can easily weather all of these global and domestic shocks, because the issue of a more developed capital market is the stability of funds to finance government projects, private sector projects, and that could mean a better framework, a better infrastructure for a more sustained and more inclusive economic growth. But if more people are going in, that would defeat the very purpose of the capital markets.
Okay, sir. Stability and governance are really integral here, and we need to hold people accountable for the budget insertions and for the ghost projects. And we need real consequences and not just investigations. That said, sir, do you trust Congress and the Senate to enforce accountability?
Well, first of all, Mikey, I would like to suggest that both the House and the Senate should continue their public hearing and investigation. But I would also suggest that let's not keep our hopes very, very high, because it looks like, on the basis of the findings so far, some of their own are involved in the anomalous flood control projects. And that means that the investigation or public hearing may be conflicted, because some of those who are involved and some of those who are concerned, and they could be the same people who are doing the investigation, should be held accountable, and therefore they should also respond to questions of their own. So it is something that that both houses of Congress should think about, and also the president.
We lost.
This independent investigative council.
Yes.
And I hope the president will be able to appoint independent people of integrity, people of competence and skills, both in the law, in governance, in financial management, to be able to show to the people that there is rule of law in the Philippines, that we uphold justice here in the Philippines, we are more transparent, and we hold everyone accountable.
Yes, that's right. President Marcos says that he will issue an executive order to establish an independent body to investigate the flood control anomalies because, as you said, some of their own may be involved. But the question is, who to put on it? Broadly speaking, how would you describe the ideal candidates for this? Without naming names, I know you can't.
Sure, I'm not sure if I'm in a position to, to identify or even to give some hint. No?
Just broadly speaking, sir.
Well, perhaps some of the more independent folk.
Okay, we're going to be taking a quick break. We lost audio over there. Business 360 will be right back.